Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. David Kelly here, race director of the Great World Race. Today we have a gentleman with us who is a native of Melbourne, Australia. He is a Gunai and Gudjumara man, which I hope I pronounced correctly, and also is extremely passionate about promoting mental health and breaking stigma in young Aboriginal men. Andrew Thorpe, you're extremely welcome to the Great World Race podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you. You can correct. Now, I think Gunai is correct. Is it Gudjumara? Is that correct?
Yeah, Gunai and Gudjumara.
Gunai. Okay, so I got both wrong. Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
That's all
Thanks for
right.
correcting.
That's all right.
I know you're saying there it's currently raining down in Australia.
Yes, yeah, down here in Melbourne, we've been raining for the last few days, and quite cold down here. So basically, getting ready for Antarctica side.
Okay, nice. So go back to start. 15 years of age, my understanding is you started working in the construction industry in Melbourne. You've been working in that since. Started running approximately 5 years ago. You've raised a lot of funds for charity, notable to close to your own heart. I think Braveheart 777, and there's an Aboriginal, I think, domestic violence. Is that correct?
Yes.
They're the two main
Yes.
charities.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if we go back there, how did you start running? Were you an athletic in school? Did you do other sports in school, or was it a bet, or what was it? Did somebody that you got into it?
I was always a long distance runner in school. When it came to the short distance, I'd come dead last, but as it got out past the 800 meters, I was always in my element. Never really took off as a runner though. It sort of didn't interest me too much because I had football, AFL football down here, and I always played that every weekend. I was always running with that, training 3-4 nights a week, playing on Saturdays, maybe even playing on Sundays. Um, and now, looking back at it, I never really took it that I was a runner. I took it that I was a football player. But now that I think about it, with all the running I'm doing now, I used to always outrun my opponents and always be running a lot more than everyone else. And I'd run around even when the ball wasn't in play just to tire out my opponent. So now that I realise I'm a runner, I think I've always been a runner. I just never put it directly into the running field. So yeah.
So there's a lot of Australian rules players that are actually they breathed a sigh of relief once you hung up the boots and just got into running full time.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting time. I had a few injuries, and I was starting my own company, construction company. So I did finish earlier than I probably would have liked, but it was for the better. And now that I've got into running, I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more. Although I feel tired after marathons or ultras, it still doesn't come anywhere near the pain that you get from having a hard game of football, where you get knocks, bruises, corks, and don't have to deal with any of that sort of stuff. So it's great.
It's a lot. At least it's self-inflicted pain. It's not some other person trying to take your head off. There's none of that in any marathon event that I've seen. Now there hasn't been that yet, anyway.
Nah, no, I hope it doesn't come into play at all.
No. So you've ran ultra race wise. You ran 100 kilometers. Is that the longest you've
Yes,
done ultra?
yeah, yes. So I've done many marathons. I have done a 777 before, but it was 7 marathons, 7 days across 7 states of Australia. So a lot smaller scale than what we're about to do. But it was a great insight into what we are going to be taking on. I've also done 100 kilometers. It was my own run, essentially. I was the only one running. I picked my own course. I actually started where I'm living now, and waved my way through Melbourne to the base of Dardi Manwara, their Aboriginal men's group in domestic violence, men's health, mental health, things like that. And it was to raise money for them. So when I do my big runs, I've done it. I like to do it so that I can do it for a cause and promote more than just me doing a run. I like to put it out on the world stage, essentially. And I've done a couple of trail runs where, your 56K trail runs, things like that. And as we're just talking offline, I'm about to go and help out a mate. He's about to run the miler this weekend. So I'm going to do a support running through him through the night. So help him out.
Brilliant. I'd say anytime anyone runs 100 mile, any supported people that run a couple of laps, and they'll be extremely happy. It's no, so
Yes.
Yeah. So just actually go back there. So you've ran 7 marathons in 7 days.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
It was I want to say a lot easier than what we're about to do with you guys, because we did get to sleep in a hotel every night. But at the same time, it's prepared me mentally to take on that challenge. The getting up day after day, taking on a marathon and rolling on. But again, unlike no different to what you just said then with the supporting the milers, having the support around and running with a group during that 777 was amazing. It would, if we didn't have the group with us, it would have been an
It's
absolute struggle.
And how many was in the group? Was there like a group? Was it an event that everyone done, or was it? Did you do it and then like the group joined you?
No, so I actually joined the group. This is what the Bravehearts side of things is. It's they support or they're a charity for stopping violence against children, sexual abuse against children. So again, it was a charity that someone seen that I was doing my 100 kilometers, and they said, "Hey, you're silly enough to do 100 Ks. What about 7 marathons?" And sure enough, I signed up for it that day, and in the comfort of my own bed, mind you. So, unbeknownst to the pressure and the pain that I was about to go through, but it was. We have to raise $10,000 for that one, and that goes towards the charity. And they're an amazing group of people there. It actually just happened. The 7th marathon is the Gold Coast Marathon, which I just did on the weekend gone, and the support through that they take you through. Like I did it 2 years ago, and I walked up to their tent at the Gold Coast Marathon, and it was like I was family. It wasn't like, oh, who are you? Where are you coming from? Like they knew who I was. They knew everyone in the group knew each other. It was quite a great turnout. They had 22 this year. What the year I did it was just out of COVID, so there was 12 of us, but then a few actually went down with COVID, so they had to sort of pull out halfway through. But even still, each state they get runners that only do the one run through the states, and they get some good turnouts with that as well, because it's for a great cause.
No, it's unbelievable. And is transport wise there, Andrew? Is there any flights involved there, or is it all like via bus or cars? But I'm presuming there has to be a bit of flights there across Australia.
Yeah, it was all. There was one where we got on a bus, but the rest were all flights, and it was a 3 hours, I think, 3 or 4 hour bus trip, but the rest are all flights, and it's all domestic flights. So hopefully our plane's a little bit better, but we were all
Will be.
racing to the gates to ask for the emergency exit seats, just so that we had that little bit extra leg room, things like that. It was, yeah, it was quite a interesting
And
time, but it
how
was
long would
also
it?
great.
How long were the flights? Yeah, duration wise.
The longest flight was 2.5 hours, I think it was 2.5, maybe
Okay.
3 hours, but yeah, quite short. But it was always of an evening. So we had a crew that would go ahead of us that would go and check into the hotels for us, everything like that. We would go and have food, get to a restaurant, whatever it might be, so that we're actually getting some good nutrition in. And then we'd get off the plane, get straight into the cars to the airport, and they'd have little bags for us. And they'd be like, right, you're in room 124, and there was your kit, they had your breakfast in it, and off you went straight to bed, up the next morning. It was
Okay.
it was really
Fantastic.
really well
Fantastic.
set
So
up.
fantastic. I'd say there's going to be a lot of people actually seriously interested in this because you've actually, done somewhat a similar preparation for that event. Could you go through it?
So it was an interesting one because it was coming off the back of my 100 kilometer run. So I had it in my legs for the distances, but what I then had to get used to was the running on tired legs. That's the biggest aspect of it. So basically, as I gradually got closer to the date, I would set myself up for not just my Sunday long run. I would go for a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday long run. They wouldn't be, maybe my longest would be say 32 kilometers on the Sunday, but I'd run say a 26, 27 Saturday, and then quite a slow 20 or 20 to 25 on the Monday. And it was more about getting that mental state ready for the fact that you're getting up and your legs are tired, your legs are sore, but you got to go again. So once you get that out of your brain, it actually, once you push through that barrier, it's amazing what your body does and what your brain does. You can, I think when I did marathon 3, about halfway through that, it's like my legs and my body just turned around and went, okay, I guess we're doing this now. So there was really no more complaints after that from my body. So it was interesting.
It it's actually pretty interesting you say that, you know, the 3 day schedule, because we obviously have a coach attached to the event, and that's one that he advised as well. Like basically, with, you know, 10, 12 weeks left, maybe every second or third week, have a 3 day schedule, whether it's the weekend or depending on your work schedule. Because a lot of people ring up and say, all right, I'm doing, say, they might be doing maybe 50, 60 kilometers a week. I'm going to run 140, 150 next week. And I'm just there, no, no, no. That is not what you want to plan. Just build it up slowly, build around your long run, nice and slow. This is very much time
Yes,
on your legs, you know. And the good thing
yes,
about it as well,
it
once you do the
definitely
kind of
is.
3 day blocks like that, the adrenaline running with other people will get you through the other four, you know, marathons 4, 5, 6, and 7. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
and the way
fueling,
they had it set up as well, they had it set up with loops. So, and I can answer you're about to ask about fueling. I can that was really well set up in a sense that there was two aid stations, one at the start line and one out basically at the halfway point. And because we were running loops, you could get your nutrition in. They had sandwiches, they had lollies, they had anything you needed, anything you asked for was there ready to go. But also the mental side, as much as there was people around and as much as we had to deal with 7 marathons, it was I guess living in the moment and taking on one lap at a time. The first marathon, everyone knew we got this. We've all run marathons before. The second marathon was a bit tiring, but again, by marathon 3, it was I don't care about 4, 5, and 6 and 7. It's I'm getting through loop 1, then I'll get through loop 2, and that you achieve your little milestones in between. And it was also something that we, with the nutrition side, it was setting little gifts and rewards. So it's like I'm not going to have a snake on loop 1 from the lolly jar. I'm going to wait till loop 2 because that's your reward for getting through 2 loops. I'm going to have a couple of snakes and get that into me, the sugar into me. And those little things kept you going throughout that event. It was key little milestones is what gets you through.
okay, so it was more actually, it's funny because people, this is one question I ask on all the podcasts. One thing I've learned about ultra running, there's nothing off the table when it comes to fueling, because some people are gels, some people are fluids. You said there's some people eat sandwiches, some people eat cake. I've heard wild and wonderful things along the way. In that event yourself, were you basically just taking everything you could get your hands on in, or like as you got on later to say marathon, say 5 and 6, you know, had you any stomach issues that you had to take on a bit more fluids, or uh, what was the fueling like? As
Um, I tried to stay with water as long as I could, um, and you know your body, especially like people don't sign up to this stuff to do their first marathons, so you know what your body's capable of, and you know that point where, especially with liquids, when you're starting to maybe go a bit too much with your liquids, and definitely obviously not enough. But no, there was at that point, marathon 1 and 2, I had some kind of plan going into. Past that point, it was whatever I'm feeling like at the time. There was sandwiches there, and I'm not a fan of butter, but there was Vegemite sandwiches with butter, and I was having they were cutting them up like we were little school children in the little triangles, and I was just picking up 3 of them and just running along. I think the biggest thing isn't necessarily what you're eating; it's making sure you're not eating it too quick, and because then it's going to cause the stomach issues. I would have that whole 3 sandwiches, 3 little. It's not even a full sandwich, and that would nearly last me a whole loop because I was just nibbling at it as I was going along. Um, Whereas if I had have just inhaled it and you know got my way through, I would have then copped a stitch or some gut problems, whatever it might have been, and that's where you start running into dramas because it's hard enough running it. Throwing some extra mental battles in there, it's not ideal.
yeah, no, Stitch would not be ideal. And pacing wise, the first couple of marathons, I've been on other 777 events. And it is one thing I always say to people: the first 2 or 3 marathons, take it on the easier side. If you're feeling good on the last couple of marathons, you can move it on. Obviously, it sounds like yourself, you had it all well under control, pacing wise.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's cliche, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, and in this scenario, obviously, it's 7 marathons. So, I was at the time that I did it, I was a PB of 3 hours 20 for the marathon. So I set out to average 4 hours per marathon, and then I was feeling really good the whole time. It wasn't about let's get to the finish line first, although there was some rewards there by the bigger gap I had between first and second. I could actually then take the massage table for a lot longer, but it was the best part, I guess, with it all was knowing that I still had a little bit left in the tank at the end of each marathon gave me the confidence to go into the next day to take on that marathon. And that's where you got to have all these little, again, they're all brain tricks that keep you going. But it's no, I kind of explain it to people sometimes that when I'm trying to help people start their running adventures and their journeys, you don't tell them to go out and do a 5K run straight away. You tell them to, walk, run for a certain amount of time or distance, whatever it might be, depending on who they are. And the main thing out of it is I say, make sure you finish with a smile on your face, because that'll make you come back the next day and do more. But if you're finishing it and you're absolutely wrecked and you're tired and you've had a bad day and that just adds to it, it's going to make it harder to get up the next day and keep going on with it.
They're extremely wise words that most people do not listen to, but they're extremely wise.
Yes, yeah. Once you get to the levels that we're at, it's even harder, because now I just push myself and I'm trying to find that breaking point. But I know that I'm enjoying it at the same time. It might be 3 days later that I go, oh yeah, that was fun. But in the moment, it might be pretty hard burn.
Yeah, and just to go back there, so we talked about the Gunai and Gudjumara. Could you just give us a bit of insight into that and the background?
So I'm an proud Aboriginal.
They're based out.
Man,
Sorry, I'm
Gunai and
after mispronouncing it again, so I do apologise for that.
That's right. That's completely fine. But yeah, Gunai and Gudjumara. So for those that don't know, really, obviously, I live down near Melbourne. I'm an hour out of Melbourne in Victoria, in Australia. But basically, if you know the states of Australia, Victoria is the southeast point, just above Tasmania, where there's the break for the water, the Bass Strait. So just east of Melbourne, or 4 hours east of Melbourne, is an area which is my Gunai Kurnai. So I'm Gunai, and that is quite a big area, a big region. But then on the west side of Victoria, so essentially both sides of Victoria, both sides of Melbourne, 4 to 4.5 hours each way. Then there's my Gudjumara side. And yeah, I don't necessarily always get to my Gudjumara side and over there much, but I grew up in Lakes Entrance, which is Gunai land, and Pakenham is right on the edge of Gunai and what is called Bunurong land, which is the next tribe along. So I'm as close as I can be, but also I'm close to town, so I can travel for my construction work and things like that. But definitely very proud. Currently, it's NAIDOC week down here in Australia, which is a big celebration for our Aboriginal people and our culture and heritage. So all my family at the moment are all in town, in the city, doing the march through the town. I guess for those that wouldn't understand it, it's similar, I guess, to Mardi Gras, but for Aboriginal people, and we take over the streets and we have a great time and we celebrate all the people that have come before us, and put everyone on a pedestal for all the amazing work that we've accomplished and all the feats that we've had to go through in history.
No, it's brilliant. So everyone else out enjoying themselves, and you're getting ready for a 100-mile run. You've definitely turned into a proper elite runner. The mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have, I think you sent to me, you have 4 children.
Yes, yeah, I've got two biological and two through foster care. So the house is quite chaotic at most times. That's partly, I guess, why I go out and do stupid runs and I'm off around the world so much. But my wife, Jacqueline, she holds the house up. If it wasn't for her, there's no way I could do any of the stuff that I do. So she's always there supporting. I've also been lucky enough with my two older children. When I finished my 100 kilometres, they ran the last about 100 metres with me over the finish line. So it was pretty proud moment there. And very similar with my very first marathon I ever did. They crossed the finish line with me. So it's been some pretty special moments with them.
No, it's fantastic. I'd say they definitely keep you busy as well.
Definitely.
It's
Definitely.
That's great. And you set up I didn't actually realize you set up your own construction. You have your own construction company as well.
Yeah, I did have my own construction company, so I ran that for 6 or 7 years. And I guess towards the end of that, I was, well, the journey of that was amazing. Loved every minute of it. I had 12 people that used to work for me. I used to do everything from domestic housing to all the way up to commercial and industrial fit out. Um, but then it was getting to a point where, for myself, where the company either needed to expand and grow really big to make it more, I guess, enjoyable and put in the work, because I was doing 6, 7 days a week, 12-hour days. I would have needed to have grown, put some more people on to take some more burden off myself, um, or I'd pull it right back and just go with me and a couple of, drop the workforce down and ease up on my hours. And then we had some business troubles where had some people that didn't pay money, some tools were stolen, and it sort of made the decision pretty easy at that point when I just said, let's close up. The 12 guys that were working for me, I spoke to all the builders and all my mates and got them all employed before I even closed the company. So it was quite an easy rollout. And then now I'm working for a major construction company called John Holland. They're an international company, but quite big in Australia. And so the step across to them was quite easy at that time as well. And I haven't looked back, because I still do the same work, but the workload is easily shared. So it means that I can. Today I've had a day off. This weekend I'm off to help my mate with his 100 mile. Family life, things like that. It's helped me look after my own mental health, and closing the company and coming into a new company. It was exactly that window where I was struggling mentally. I didn't realize it at the time while I was working. I was just pushing through everything every day, didn't ask for help, carrying it on my shoulders, and really got through. And it was Boxing Day 2019, just before COVID hit. I was at the in-laws' house, and my wife actually got up and said, "Oh, I'm going for a run because I want to get into a bit more fit and healthy lifestyle." And we're up there, like I said, with the in-laws. And I said, "Well, you can't leave me here by myself. I'm going for a run too." So rather than running together as well, she went one direction, I went the next direction, and we sort of got finished up. And it was after that run that mentally I just felt this, the endorphins and everything running through me. I just felt like it was a pick me up. So I went out for another run the following day, and then I was introduced to Park Run on New Year's Day, and it was essentially at that point where I realised I was going to be a runner. I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to run a marathon, and now it's just, what else can I do? How far can I push myself? Where can I go next?
So Jacqueline is to blame for opening that can of worms.
Definitely, yeah. So when she complains about me off running all the time, I always say to her, "You started this."
It's her own. Yeah, no, she has herself to blame. And what
Yeah,
other events have you got? Have you any other plans for events in the next coming months? What events have you planned out?
yeah, yeah. So I've got a small country marathon called the Shepparton Marathon. So that's about 4 hours from where I live. It's quite a enjoyable. It's not quite trail, but it's running through some bushlands on some nice tracks, and very flat. I'm going up there. I did it last year. I really enjoyed it, so I'm going back up there. We make it a family holiday. Not necessarily going out there for speed and chasing a PB or anything, but more because it's now in the training block, I guess, where I need to build up to these kilometres for the Great World Race. I'm sort of getting out there and having some goals in mind. So I might do a little run on the Saturday before it, and then I'll do quite a long recovery run after it, and start building up these fatigue legs and running on there, getting used to it again. So I may enter some more events and some of the smaller ones eventually, but at this point, that's all I've got locked in for now.
On the plan. No, that's fine. And just the name, Googsy. Am I pronouncing that right, Googsy? Where did that come from?
Yes, yeah. I've had it since I was a kid. My auntie, so me and my aunties are 4 years apart. So we basically grew up like brothers and sisters. And I believe I hated it being called that when I was a kid. So like any good nickname, if you hate it, it sticks. And then pretty much most of my family and friends know me as Googsy. It's actually funny because a lot of the time, like you can call my family, my nan, or any close mates, and if you called them up and said, "Oh, I'm here to speak to Andrew," they wouldn't know who to pass the phone to. It's quite a funny scenario that I've got myself into. No, not many people actually know my real name, so that's why I've sort of put Googsy on here now, and it's something that everyone knows me as. So yeah.
Well, listen, Andrew, it's been very insightful talking to you. Obviously, an experienced 7 marathons in 7 days, man. I know people, like as I said previously, people will be super interested in that. And it's listen, it's great to have you on board. Look forward to catching you up in November. And listen, thanks very much for your time.
No worries. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Cheers, Andrew. That's all great.